Yuga Dharma of the Sankirtan movement, which is the congregational chanting of the holy names of God. I heard Prabhupada talking just yesterday, and he was saying that somebody was saying, asking him that, well, this is so many different religions. And Prabhupada said, we're not any religion, we're just service of Krishna, chanting Hare Krishna. As long as religion could generally be like a designation. I'm a Hindu, I'm a Muslim, I'm a Christian, I'm a Jew. The Christian could be a Muslim in his next life, and fighting with the Christians and the Muslims could be a Christian. The external, the religious denomination can change, or it does change, one situation to another. But the eternal religious principle, especially for the age of Kali, is Hare Nam, Hare Nam, Hare Nam, in this age of Kali, it's a very unfortunate age. Kali is a very bad age. War in Ukraine, and there's so many wars going on all the time, on the national level or on the individual level. Everyone's fighting with everybody else. No one can get along. I gave the example of the United Nations. So Prabhupada came in 1965 in New York City, and the first saw the United Nations. They noticed the United Nations. It's an organization that was started after World War II with the idea that they would stop any future wars from happening, or to try to everyone could live in peace together. That's the idea. Of course, it never happened. There's so many wars always going on in the material world. But he said that at that time there was about 100 individual nations in the world. And so now there's over 200 nations in the world. Does it mean that there's twice as much land in the world and people have started new countries? No. Just means that all the countries have broken up into 2 or 3 or 4 different countries. And nobody can get along with anybody. This sect can't get along with that sect. This race can't get along with that race. This religion can't get along with that religion. That's the nature of Kali. But it's better you don't play with your phone during the class. So, it's a temptation. Everybody loves their phones. This is a formal setting. Try not to talk too much, ladies. Garland ladies. So, yeah, so it's a very unfortunate age. Kali is distinguished by quarrel and hypocrisy. Everyone is arguing with someone else, either close family members, father and mother are fighting, children and parents are fighting among themselves, children are fighting with each other, and friends are fighting with friends, or used to be friends. So everyone is fighting. And there's a quarrel over this tiniest little thing, the tiniest thing. Yeah, I'm driving my car and you passed me with your car, so I have to follow you and honk at you and curse you. Sometimes they take out a gun and shoot the person, a road rage, and that's because somebody passed them. while they were driving. This is that's the nature of Kali Yuga. It's a very unfortunate age, and people are very slow. The intelligence is very small. Of course, we consider ourselves very intelligent, and everyone is very proud. We have a little bit of intelligence. We can read, we can write, we can learn to use a computer. We can do some things. We have a little bit of intelligence. But compared to the previous ages of our Sakya Yuga, our intelligence is extremely small. And but we have enough intelligence that we can hear from the bona fide authority in disciplic succession. When Prabhupada came to the United States in 1965, and he began preaching in New York City, and then gradually all over the country, all over the world. In New York City, he was meeting all young men and women mostly, who didn't know anything about Krishna consciousness, nothing at all, except some people had read some other yogis or swamis, and they had some idea, all impersonal ideas that you merge with the one, you become one with everything, you become one with God. This is an impersonal idea. It means that ultimately God is not a person, and you're not an individual person. You merge with the one. And that became a very, and it still is today, a very popular idea of what transcendental life is. In fact, most people, if you ask them what they know about Indian culture, spirituality, they'll give it some kind of idea of Vedanta, that it means that oneness, not individuality. That's described, and that's a possibility. You can merge with the Brahmajyoti. That is a possibility, and it is a spiritual position. But you never lose your individuality, and it's described in the Chaitanya Charitamrita by Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami as a form of atheism. It's actually the subtlest form of atheism. That the outright atheists will say, there's no God. I don't know. There's no God. God doesn't exist. Or God is dead. Something crazy like that. But the impersonalism is a form of atheism because they deny the individuality of Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Absolute has no form, has no eyes, has no ears, legs, you can't walk, you can't. You're reducing the transcendental, like if I say, oh, you're a person, but you don't have any eyes, you don't have any legs, you don't have any brain. You don't have anything. But you're a person. So that's a pretty insulting way to speak about a person. So it's okay, this absolute truth that's formless or void, ultimately impersonal, not a person. So if I say to you, nice to meet you, you're not a person. You're not a person. You wouldn't like that. And it's not true. It's not factual. You are a person. Everyone these days has some idea of reincarnation. Among the average person, everyone has heard the term transmigration of the soul or reincarnation. But they don't have no concrete idea of what it means. They generally think that it means that if you had a life before, you were somebody else. or you will have another body in the future. You'll be somebody else. You weren't somebody else in the past. You won't be someone else in the future. You were always you, and you'll always be you eternally, which is a pretty amazing thought to me. I've always been me. And I can see that within this life. I know that I've always been me. Although my body is certainly different than when I was a baby or when I was a teenager, when I was 40 years old. My body is different, certainly. And my way of thinking has changed. But I know that I'm the same person I was when I was a young boy. And 20 years from now, if this body lasts that long, I'll still be me. I'll still be the same person. So this is, we've already transmigrated in this life from boyhood to youthful old age. So at the time of death, the soul takes another body, and the self-realized person is not bewildered by such a change. So when we take another body, or when we had other bodies in the past, I was me. I was always me, and I'll always be me. And Krishna has always been Krishna, and he'll always be Krishna. And you're always you. You'll never be someone else. You'll never be someone else. You'll always be you. And we always have our eternal relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Krishna. And so in that relationship, we don't know our specific relationship with Krishna in Vrindavan. In Vrindavan, we don't know. Am I a cow? Am I a blade of grass? Am I a cow or a boy? Am I a monkey? I don't know what I am in Vrindavan, eternally with Krishna. But I have that form. But I know, and what I do know, what we all know, is that we're the servant of Krishna, whether you're a blade of grass or a cow or a monkey or Krishna's mother. We're always in a role of servant. That much we know. And that's enough for us for now. We don't have to know more. Everything else we'll learn in the course of time. But Ekala Ishvara Krishna are Sabhavritya. Only Krishna is supreme master, is the master, and everyone else is his servant. And this is the point that's objectionable. It's really objectionable to the conditioned soul. Oh, and this is why there's so much. Impersonalism is so prevalent, because it can be, it can be spiritual, it can be self-realized, but I don't have to surrender to a person. There's no person, God. So there's no one to surrender to. I merge with the one. So I am the Supreme. I don't have to serve anyone. I don't have to submit myself to anyone. So the conditioned soul in the material world, they don't like religion, they don't like God. They may take to it nominally, but when it comes right down to it, I understand that I'm eternally the infinitesimal, insignificant servant of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And then that's not pleasant to the conditioned soul. We don't like that. But that's why impersonalism is attractive. Be spiritual, but you don't have to surrender to a person. So in Prabhupada's second pranam mantra, Namaste Saraswati Deve Gaur Vani Pracharane Nirvishesha Shrimari Ashtichara Deshakarane, which he wrote himself, and he describes himself as Namaste Saraswati Deve, the disciple of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Gaur. It's Namaste Gaur Vani Pracharane, preaching the glories of Lord Chaitanya, Nirvishesha Shrimari, and Ashtichara Deshakarane. have come to save the world from impersonalism and voidism. It's such an important point to Prabhupada that he put it directly in his pranam mantras, not only to Prabhupada, but to all the previous acharyas in our disciplic succession. And it's important to Krishna. So he claims himself in the Bhagavad Gita, I am the source of all moving and non-moving beings, and everything rests on me as pearls are strung on a thread. Brahman Pratishthamam, I'm the source of the impersonal Brahman, Brahmajyoti. Krishna, it's important to Krishna to fight against the impersonal idea of the absolute. And it's important to all the acharyas in disciplic succession. And it's so important for Prabhupada that if you listen to his lectures, read his books, you'll find that he is blasting the impersonalist Mayavadis. He equates the two. Mayavadi is impersonalist, and he's constantly blasting them. Even in the purport of the verse doesn't seem to have anything to do with that particular point. But Prabhupada doesn't care. He takes every opportunity to fight again, because it's such a detrimental idea, such a destructive philosophy. You're one with everything, you're one with the absolute. There is no individual supreme personality of God, and you don't have to surrender. You don't have to surrender. It sounds good, and I don't have to surrender. But no, we do have to surrender. And Krishna demands that in chapter 18, verse 66 of the Bhagavad Gita, Sarva Karma Paritaja Mam Ekam Sharanam Vraja Aham Tam Sarva Papebhyo Moksha Ishami Mashvijana. Just abandon everything else, all varieties of religion, and everything else, any attraction to all types of sense gratification. We all are attracted to the various forms of sense gratification. And but Krishna said, no, just give that up. Just give up all your religious ideas, your sectarian religion. Just give everything up. And just surrender to me. I'll protect it from all sinful reactions. Do not fear. You don't have to worry. In the material world, everyone is always worried. And it's that first canto of the Bhagavatam that Shri Vyasadeva is describing the qualities of the individual in the age of Kali. Very slow spiritually, not very intelligent, don't live very long, and above all, their minds are always disturbed. But we can all attest to that fact that our minds are always disturbed. But nobody likes to be disturbed. Everyone is searching for peace of mind. Everyone would like to be peaceful in our mind. But our minds are not peaceful in material activity, material consciousness, thinking, I am this body, I belong in this material world, I like this and this and this and that, I don't like that and that and I have to do this and that. I have so many desires to fulfill. Can never be peaceful with that separatist mentality. But when we apply the same to the service of Krishna, I like flowers. So I desire to make a flower garland for Krishna. Or I'm a studious fellow. I like to study. So an intellectual inclination. So I study the Bhagavad Gita as it is. Study the Srimad Bhagavatam, and then all our activities are perfect. And the same activities we'd be doing anyway in the material world. In the material way, we would do some flowers, or we work in some profession. We have our tendencies. We will act according to our tendencies. So we just do those, employ those tendencies in the service of Krishna. And then there's no fear, there's no anxiety, there's no entanglement, there's no karma. There's only happiness. Krishna says, Krishna consciousness is eternal and it's joyfully performed. Here in the world, they try to find joy. But there's nothing joyful in the material world. They try to find some joy in I like this, I like that. I went snowboarding the other day and I felt such joy. But it lasted for a couple of hours and I knew that. And there was no joy in the material world. But in Krishna consciousness, every activity is full of joy. The devotees make the flower garlands. They do the same thing every day. Make the same type of garland, use the same flowers. They don't expect to get individual recognition. Although we do recognize all the devotees for their individual service, we do support all the devotees, encourage each other, and particular service. That's very important. But it is one of the most important things to help each other in our service and encourage each other. We all need that. So we all need that. Wants that. But we don't expect that somebody to come and say, "Oh, you're such a good garland maker, and you're such a good cook." And we're not expecting that. We're not expecting, well, look at me, I made this beautiful garland today. I should be getting paid for this. I should be getting paid. This is such artistic work, so beautiful. But the devotees don't think like that. We don't think, oh, why aren't I getting paid for this? I'm working. We don't think like that. We think this is my service to my spiritual master, who's offering it to Krishna, and he's offering it to his spiritual master. The offerings go up through the line of disciplic succession through our own spiritual master, and the blessings come down from Krishna through the chain of disciplic succession to us. We don't think I'm serving Krishna directly. Well, we always say, yes, I'm serving Krishna. And there's nothing wrong with thinking like that or saying that I'm a servant of Krishna. But the actual fact is that the reality of that serving Krishna is that we're serving our spiritual master in disciplic succession. We're serving his spiritual master, we're serving his spiritual master. And we're getting the blessings of Krishna coming down through the chain of disciplic succession. I'm just going to read a little bit from the Chaitanya Charitamrita, this particular pastime of Lord Chaitanya cleaning the Gundicha temple. Probably everyone here knows that story. Lord Jagannath, they leave the Gundicha temple after the Snati Yatra and go to the Gundicha temple for a couple of weeks before the Rath Yatra. And so Lord Chaitanya took his disciples and all his followers, and they went to the Gundicha temple to clean it in preparation for Lord Jagannath to go there for the period. And so I'll read a few verses from that. Upon hearing the Lord's request for them to wash the Gundicha temple, the Padicha, the superintendent of the temple, said, "My dear sir, we are all your servants. Whatever your desire is, whatever
you desire is our duty to perform. The king gave a special order for me to do without delay whatever your lordship orders. My dear Lord, washing the temple is not service befitting you. Nonetheless, if you wish to do so, it is to be accepted as one of your pastimes. To wash the temple, you need many water pots and brooms. Therefore, order me. I can immediately bring all of these things to you. The next day, early in the morning, the Lord took his personal associates with him, and with his own hands smeared sandalwood pulp on their bodies. He then gave each devotee a broom with his own hand, and taking all of them personally with him, the Lord went to Gundicha. The Lord cleansed everything inside the temple very nicely, including the ceiling. He then took up the sitting place, Singhathan, cleansed it, and again put it in its original place. Thus the Lord and his companions cleansed and swept all the temple's buildings, big and small, and finally cleansed the area between the temple and the meeting place. Indeed, hundreds of devotees were engaged in cleansing all around the temple, and Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was personally carrying out the operation just to instruct them. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu collected all the straw, dust, and grains of the sand in one place. He gathered it all in his cloth and threw it outside. Following the example of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, all the devotees in great jubilation began to gather straws and dust with their own cloths and throw them outside the temple. The Lord then told the devotees, I can tell how much you have labored and how well you have cleansed the temple simply by seeing all the straw and dust you have collected outside. Even though all the devotees collected dirt in one pile, the dirt collected by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was much greater. Anyway, the pastime goes on, and then what is the verse? The Lord mopped the rooms with his own clothes, and he polished the throne with them also. In this way, all the rooms were cleansed with 100 water pots. After the rooms had been cleansed, the minds of the devotees were as clean as the rooms. This temple, the Boston temple, is known as New Gundicha temple. So, of course, any temple, your home, if your home a temple, you have deities, the pictures of Krishna in your own home, in your own temple. And if we come to the temple, and one of the most basic services in the temple is doing something to clean the temple. Wash the pots in the kitchen, clean the floor, clean the hallways, empty the trash cans, take the trash out. One of the most basic services in the material world. This kind of service is looked down upon. You see somebody cleaning the floors in an office building, and people think, oh, he's just a cleaner. And that kind of service is something looked down upon by many people. It's, I'm a software technician, or I'm a doctor, I'm a professor, or I'm this, I'm that. Well, he's just a cleaner in this building. And it's considered a lowly form of service. It's not lowly in the material world. And then certainly in the temple, in the spiritual world, it's one of the most basic services that every devotee should take some time and put some energy into doing some cleaning and serve it in the temple. One of the first times I went to the old Boston temple, the devotees gave me a bucket and a rag and said, can you wash these walls? And I said, okay, wash the walls. And he told me a story. He told me a story about Krishna and the wives of Krishna, the queens. They're queens. They're not. They're in position. Each wife of Krishna is a queen of the Supreme Personality of God. And so he told me that in Dwarka, each queen has their own palace, and each palace is made of Chintamani gems. They're not the spiritual gems, they're made of Chintamani, and they never get dirty. The walls never get dirty. And the wives, they don't have to, all the wives have many servants who will gladly clean the walls of the temple for the queen and for Krishna. They will happily clean the walls. But he said that the queens of Dwarka, they individually clean the walls themselves. Not only them, but they could clean the walls of the temple. They don't have to be cleaned, they're Chintamani, and they have so many servants who will clean the walls, but they personally want to clean the walls just so that Krishna will be pleased with them. So they're the queens. Krishna's pleased with them. His wives, all the devotees and they're all goddesses of fortune. They're not ordinary women. They're not ordinary human beings. They're all goddesses of fortune. Expansions of Srimati Radharani, ultimately. All the gopis, all the queens of Dwarka are expansions of Srimati Radharani. And they all want to do some menial service just for the satisfaction of Krishna, just for Krishna's pleasure. And here Krishna himself, Lord Chaitanya, is taking that position of cleaning the Gundicha temple to the extent that he mopped the floor with his own garment. He cleaned everywhere with his own butt. So if Krishna can do it, if Lord Chaitanya can do it, if the queens of Dwarka can do it, goddess of fortune, we should be happy to just think about that when you come to the temple. Try to get involved in some cleaning. It's a very nice, very satisfying service. And so I'll read a couple more verses. Okay, this is when the water from the different rooms was finally let out to the halls, it appeared as if new rivers were rushing out to meet the waters of the ocean. Outside the gateway of the temple, all the roads were also cleansed, and no one could tell exactly how this was done. This is Prabhupada's purport. In commenting on the cleansing of the Gundicha temple, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur says that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was personally giving instructions on how one should receive Lord Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, within one's cleansed and pacified heart. If one wants to see Krishna seated in his heart, he must first cleanse the heart, as prescribed by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in his Shikshastaka, Chaito Darpana Marjanam. In this age, everyone's heart is unclean, as confirmed in Srimad Bhagavatam, Vidyantaksto Yabadrani. To wash all dirty things accumulated within the heart, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu advised everyone to chant the Hare Krishna mantra. The first result will be that the heart is cleansed. Chaito Darpana Marjan. Similarly, Srimad Bhagavatam 1:2:17 also confirms this statement. Srinvatam Sakata Krishna Punya Shavana Kirtana Vidyamplaksto Hivadrani, Vidranati Suhritsatam. Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead, who is the Paramatma, Supersoul in everyone's heart, and the benefactor of the truthful devotee, cleanses desire for material enjoyment from the heart of the devotee, who relishes his messages, which are in themselves virtuous when properly heard and chanted. So it said here that cleanses the desire for material enjoyment from the heart. Desire for material enjoyment, we're all familiar with that. The basic enjoyment is sex desire, and the desire for the tongue, the prayer we say before we take the shadam is Shrira Vidita, Jitendriya Deva, Lord, this material body is a lump of ignorance. We don't like to think of our body as it must be a commercial on television saying your body is a lump of ignorance. That you can wash it with this soap. At least you can keep your lump of ignorance clean with this soap. It's good soap. They won't say that, don't they? Your body is so wonderful. You're a goddess, or you're a beautiful person, and this miracle cleansing product will soothe you and cleanse your body. But no, the material body is a lump of ignorance. It's made out of dirt. It's no more than dirt transformed. We eat food that comes out of the dirt, and the food is transformed into various kinds of cells and incorporated in the body. So the body is nothing other than dirt transformed in various ways. But we don't think of ourselves as dirt. We don't think I'm a lump of dirt. We think I'm me. I'm a person. So we're not the body, but this material body is a lump of ignorance, and the senses are networks of paths leading to death. And that's not a palatable idea to the materialist. The senses are networks of paths leading to death. Their idea is that the idea of every conditioned soul is that the purpose of life is to gratify the senses, is to look at something beautiful, smell something sweet, taste something delicious. The purpose of life is to enjoy the senses. The senses are wonderful. But no, Bhaktivinoda Thakur says the senses are networks of paths leading to death. It's a fact. And of all the senses, the tongue is the most voracious and difficult to control. Everyone knows that with our tongue, we want to taste all kinds of things. Oh, I want to get Chinese. I want to get Chinese food. I want to get Italian food. I don't want to go to this restaurant or that restaurant. Everybody's always thinking about what they're going to eat, what they're going to put in their tongue. They plan their whole day. The materialist plans the whole day around that. Maybe you can shut that book. Shut that book. Yeah, they plan their whole day around what am I going to have for dinner tonight? What am I going to cook for dinner? So of all the senses, the tongue is the most voracious and difficult to control. In Roman, you may have heard, like during the Roman Empire, it was the rich people. The rich people would have these feasts with so many preparations, and they would go on for hours. And they would eat and eat and eat until they threw up. And then after they threw up, they could eat some more because their stomach was empty again. And they considered that a good way to spend the day. Eat myself silly and throw up, and eat myself silly again. The tongue, and that's a pretty extreme example, but we all have experience of, oh, this tastes so good, I just want to eat more and more of it. It's so delicious. And so the tongue is the most voracious and difficult to control. That's why we take prasadam. The prasadam, Krishna prasadam, is so delicious and so satisfying. And even if you do eat way too much, it's still good for you because Prabhupada said we're eating our way back home, back to Godhead. You can go back to Godhead just by eating prasadam. And Prabhupada described prasadam in terms of preaching. He described it as a secret weapon. The easiest way to preach is to give it, especially to people who don't want Krishna consciousness, or think they don't want Krishna consciousness, or don't want Krishna consciousness. The easiest way to preach to them is give them Krishna, because they don't know. Oh, if you say it's spiritual, I don't care, it tastes good. And I like to eat. So anyway, it is material, but you take it in the material sense that I just want to put something in my mouth. I don't care what it is, as long as it excites me, tastes good in some way, I will put it in my mouth and I will eat it. And so that's sex desire and eating, of course, are very prominent items of sense gratification. Everyone is attracted to them. Everyone is fully engaged in doing them, thinking about them. But those are material enjoyments. So Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead, who is the Paramatma in everyone's heart and the benefactor of the truthful devotee, a very important point that the truthful devotee, in order to take the Krishna consciousness, the devotee has to be truthful. We have to admit the truth when we hear it. This is the saying in we try it away one night, but it's good. Anyways, we have to be truthful to be a devotee. If you like something, but you can't, but it's bad for you, just like they have an intervention for a person who is addicted to drugs or gambling or something, alcohol. So sometimes their friends will get together and invite that person, and they'll do what's known as an intervention. They'll sit him down and they'll say, look, you're ruining your life. You're killing yourself and you're hurting everyone around you by this addiction. So, so if the person is truthful with himself, he'll admit that, yeah, I'm destroying myself. I'm hurting everyone around me. If he is not truthful, if he'll say, I'm not so bad. I mean, yeah, all my friends and relatives, they have problems. It's not my fault. I'm not that bad. But a person who's truthful will admit that, yes, I'm really hurting myself and I'm really hurting so many other people by this activity. So that's what preaching is. Preaching is an intervention for all the conditioned souls. We're all coming out of this state of ignorance and addiction to material sense gratification, addiction to material life. And so preaching is an intervention. The spiritual master is telling us that, no, you're in Maya. You think you're the body, You're not the body. You don't want to worship Krishna. You've rebelled against Krishna, and you don't want to serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But that is wrong. You're absolutely 100% wrong, and you're killing yourself by doing it. You're harming yourself, and you're doing harm to everyone you come in contact with by engaging by that conditioned way of life, that conditioned way of thinking. So I'm here to tell you that you're wrong, but I have the solution. It's not just oh, you got to stop it. You got to stop material sense enjoyment. I'm here to tell you that you replaced your material sense gratification with Krishna consciousness, with trying to satisfy the senses of Krishna. It's still sense gratification, but it's Krishna's sense gratification. And in so doing, and people will object. They'll say, oh, that means I don't get anything. I get everything for Krishna. I don't get anything. And so I don't like that. But no, the idea is that not only the idea, the fact is that by giving whatever we give to Krishna, as a surrender unto me, I reward them accordingly. All men follow my path in all respects. Or those who surrender unto me, I reward them accordingly. So it's just like a young child or a child who gratefully and fervently and with a whole heart serves his parents. It's not like, oh, well, thank you for serving me, my child. I'm satisfied, but I'm not giving you anything. No, it's naturally be pleased with the child who's very humble and serves them with love and devotion. So they'll give him everything, or her everything. So is Krishna less grateful than a kind father or mother in this material world? He's more grateful. He's the most grateful person there is. And so he gladly, happily reciprocates with everyone. So, but we have to be truthful in the beginning, and not only in the beginning, but constantly. We have to acknowledge the fact that I'm rebellious against Krishna. Now I'm going to try to surrender to Krishna again. I'm going to completely change my ways, my life, everything about myself, all my ways of thinking. I'm going to completely change and surrender wholeheartedly to Krishna, to my spiritual master. And everything will be when Krishna enjoys your service and naturally you reciprocate. Prabhupada gives one example of a person who, if you decorate his face, with cosmetics, naturally the face in the mirror becomes decorated. So you try to be satisfied Krishna, and automatically you will be satisfied also. Prabhupada said that all we're trying to do is to make Krishna smile. And when you see Krishna smile, then you will smile everlastingly. Okay, we're going to stop there. There's a couple of minutes if anyone wants to question or comment. I think I'm going to read a little more. Just read a little more. Purport. If the devotee at all wants to cleanse his heart, he must chant and hear the glories of the Lord, Sri Krishna, Chindratam Sakata Krishna. This is a simple process. Krishna himself will help cleanse the heart because he is already seated there. Krishna wants to continue living within the heart, and the Lord wants to give directions. Prabhupada describes Krishna consciousness, hearing and chanting about Krishna as a very simple process. We're already doing it all day long. We're talking about sports, politics, we're talking about the food that we want. We're hearing and chanting about something. Everybody's always talking about something with somebody, and they're listening to what that person said. Did you hear what he said? Did you hear what she did? And oh no, what happened? And, so we're always doing that. We're hearing and chanting about someone, somebody. Or I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. But instead, we do the simple process and just stop talking about ourselves and everyone else under the sun, and hear and chant about Krishna. Okay, I'm going to stop there. All glories to Shiva.